viewers and the people, the Pan-African people of Africa, and mainly the people of Kenya. Elections in Africa create difficulties. Everywhere in Africa, you find conflicts emanating from elections. Results declared, the loser does not come out to concede. Elections, if not well managed, can trigger the worst crisis for any nation in Africa. It is therefore very prudent for the people of Kenya not to buy populist ideas and forget the hinge point of electoral reforms, electoral injustices, electoral systems, mechanisms that can change Kenya and bring a credible results of an election where the losers and the winner will agree this was a fair contest. Given that circumstances, the circumstances that surround our badly managed elections, Kenya faces this challenge. A referenda of reducing MPs to zero does not solve your problem, because that problem of Kenya is a structural challenge. It's a structural challenge in the sense that the structures themselves give access to more money stolen, to more money hidden, to more money misappropriated by various institutions. Therefore, to have credible electoral reforms, credible electoral systems, credible electoral mechanisms will solve 1/3 of the Kenya's problems, in that we shall have credible, proportionally elected people who represent all the views of the people of Kenya. That is my take. And that's the take of anybody who looks at the current situation, that any group that would come up and does not discuss the question of elections in Africa and in Kenya as a case study, and use it and look at how many dead bodies do we always collect when we mention the word elections. It is all over Africa. In Uganda, it is happening. In Zimbabwe, as we speak now, they are on the streets of Harare. It's because of elections. They want to come and overthrow and break down everything in Zimbabwe. It's elections. So elections in Africa create conflicts. But how can we stop violence before and after elections? Is through proportional representation of the model of South Africa, which has held elections, but there's peace on the streets of the cities. Thank you very much, viewers. Thank you very much, my people of Kenya. That's my message. I stand to be corrected, but I think it is only until you get a proportional representation system that will deliver every part of this country into your house of representation, into your elections, is when stability and tranquility will be permanent forever in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, wherever you are in Africa, on the continent of Africa, right from Cape Town, Cairo, Abuja, Lagos, Accra, Abidjan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, Khartoum, Sudan, Asmara. Good evening. Good evening, viewers, Africans, wherever you are on the continent, in Lusaka. Thank you very much for the barrier of the Pan-African last man standing, Dr. KK Kaunda. Thank you very much. His soul rest in peace permanently, so that Africa can learn a lesson, Can Africa do a renaissance? Good evening. Good evening across Africa, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, where the Amazonians want democracy, want self-determination. Good evening. You have been butchered for the last, since 1961. You have had your problems. Across in Nigeria, good evening. Biafra, the Biafrans have been butchered, killed, maimed, tortured. The world is watching. The world is watching. Across in Libya, in Tripoli, the world is again watching. Libyans are dying. The mercenaries have cut Libya into two parts. The bleeding goes on. African Union watches. Down in Chad, the same happens. Across in Somalia, Al-Shabaab is on our neck. We have tried Africa. What happens? The ticking point of Africa. This show is the ticking point of Africa. Mark you, this show will be coming every Wednesday from 7 o'clock up to 9 o'clock. This is now the landmark show, two of them. There is the Matsanga Africa Perspective show. And there is this show, the ticking point of Africa. Matsanga ticking point. Across in Democratic Republic of Congo, rebels have taken up arms. They are killing people. Across in Chad, the president of Chad 2 months ago was slaughtered in cold blood. Across the Atlantic near Haiti, because of elections, the president was assassinated last night. Across in South Africa, because of bad management, the rainbow country looks like it is dropping. The rainbow country is falling to pieces. North of Limpopo in Zimbabwe, Chamisa still thinks of elections. 3 years past, he's still thinking of an election that took place in 2018. Across in Uganda, where I was born, election is over. But people are still thinking of taking action because of elections. Across in Tanzania, you saw the late Magufuli took a stand and the CCM won an election. But you saw opponents running around the whole world saying that the election was not free and fair. In Zambia itself today, they are nearing election time. The pressure is mounting on the government to hold an election. The question therefore, does Africa understand elections? Another question, do we need elections in Africa? Let's frankly discuss. Are we ready for elections? How were we governing ourselves before this thing called elections was introduced by the colonial master, whether Spanish, Portuguese, French, English, Chinese? They brought this thing, not even Chinese, because China does not hold elections. Have you seen them? How many of you on this platform listening to me across the world here who can tell me that they have seen a Chinese MP? If you find one member of parliament of China, bring him to me or tell me, call me. I'll give you dinner in your nearest hotel in your country of origin in Africa. I've never seen a Chinese MP at all. But China lends us money, which we eat every day, which we guzzle which we buy, which we build mansions. Corruption, corruption. We corrupt our elections. Democratic Republic of Congo, a country with minerals, was not able to hold elections for more than 7 years. It kept on postponing elections. And the answer why they did not hold elections, my dear panel, my listeners, those who have joined me via Zoom, it is because they said they did not have the money. Can you think Democratic Republic of Congo can lack money when only 200 kilos of diamonds sold on Rio market in Belgium can hold about 40 elections in Africa? What is wrong with Africa? What has gone wrong? If you look at the regime in Nigeria, for example, 84 million people registered for elections in Nigeria during the second Buhari so-called government. The 84 million people who registered, out of 84 million, only 28 million people in Nigeria voted. The rest, you can do your mathematics. How many did not vote? Did Nigerians need elections? Did Nigerians need elections? Have Nigerians got a value for their elections? Did they have value for their elections? The answer, I leave it to you, to people to tell me. When you look in the question of Nigeria again, an election was cancelled 1 hour before the polling station was to be opened. Can you term that election credible? That's why if you have a bad election, you can have a government that kidnaps people, that abducts people, and they don't tell the world where they abducted these people from, not knowing the consequences of international abduction and the rendition of people is against the Human Rights Charter of the United Nations. It's because of bad elections that we have governments that are very bad. Like Paul Biya is one of the worst governments that we have in this continent of Africa. Paul Biya and the wife enjoy all the trappings of the colors in Cameroon. But across in southeastern Cameroon, the Amazonians suffer. For the last 4 years, the people of Amazonia have been saying from 1961 resolution 1608, when they were told to have an independent state of Amazonia, they have battled to date the United Nations General Assembly because France has blocked such a decision to be taken in Cameroon. Does Africa need elections? How many fake elections has Nigeria held? Look at the Buhari current situation. People are demanding for a referendum. The Biafrans say that the nation needs rearrangement. They want a referendum. Buhari answers them back by kidnapping those who are saying, please, just give us a referendum. Do we need an election? Does Africa need elections? What type of elections is Africa equipped to hold a free and a fair elections? Do we know the meaning of elections? Today, in Uganda, there are so many people who wake up to go and vote. But do they know why they vote? Do they have value for their vote? How many of Ugandans know why they vote? How many? That's my own country. In Kenya, where we are now, we are gearing towards an election. And you can simply sit back and watch and ask yourself, does Kenya need an election? Do we need an election in Kenya at the moment? President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to stabilize a united Kenya. What is the use of having an election? Another answer, another question. What is the use of having an election and end up burning the whole city, the infrastructure, uprooting the railway, destroying people's property, killing people because of a disputed election? That is the pinnacle of our discussion tonight. The fulcrum, the center rotates around there. Do we need an election? Does your country in Africa need an election? If the answer is yes, tell me what you have gained out of election. The only country in Africa that has voted and gone home without a petition in court, and mark my words, without a petition in court, is South Africa. The rest of the countries, including Ghana, some of you would jump and say, Ghana. No. Ghana, every time they lose Mahama is always in court against Nana Addo. He's always there fighting. He won, but someone stole his votes. Does Africa therefore need an election? Look at Zimbabwe, case study. Chamisa is still running around the world calling for sanctions against Mnangagwa because of an election. Instead of building the party for 2023, we are wasting more time. He's wasting more time, fragmenting the party even further, because he's talking of the same thing that passed. Do we respect our Supreme Courts? Do we respect our constitutional courts? How many African countries respect the constitutionalism that is embedded in our judiciary? To me, it looks like one of the countries that is trying to embrace. I don't agree. Tawish, no way. There's no way Botswana. You saw Botswana used to change the government without any problem. No sooner had Hama handed over power to Masisi than Hama returning to say no, there is a need to contest again. Why is Africa shifting towards changing the constitutions? Why? I want my panel today. I want to panel you, and you panel me. If you have any questions, panel me. Talk to me. My fellow Africans, why are presidents in Africa changing the constitution and the term limits? Do they fear to be charged? Do they fear the Mubarak way? What is the problem? All is caused by bad election and bad administration. I've given you examples of bad administration. Every conflict in Africa, believe me or not, as I end, is caused by bad elections. Look at all of them. Show me one which did not come from an election. Show me. The overthrow of Siad Barre was the rigging of the last election in 1991. In Somalia went to the dogs because of an election. Show me one. Museveni went to Bush in 1981 to fight our government because of a bad election in 1980. Yes, yes. Show me one. Mr. Riek Machar disagreed with Salva Kiir because of an election, internal election mechanism. Riek wanted a reform of SPLM to turn it and let's have elections, let's change the constitution. Salva Kiir refused. They brought out AK-47s and killed each other and killed millions, almost a million people. 384,000 South Sudanese are not accounted for. There's no accountability. So that's elections. Bashir lost power because people wanted elections. They thought that he was not guiding the country in the right way. And that is why elections in Africa are very important. Look at Tanzania. Magufuli, President Pombe Magufuli, died still telling opposition that they have no space ever in Africa, in Tanzania. That is because of elections. Elections in Africa create conflicts. Let's not hide about it. Let's not talk about some other things. Let's be very honest and tell the world, does Africa need elections? Another lastly, as I submit, China does not hold elections. But China has more money than America. China lends money to America at night. But Americans don't want Africans to borrow money from China during daytime. Have you asked yourselves as Africans on this show why America borrows money at night from China to keep its so-called economy, but then it goes to put sanctions on Zimbabwe, which has held elections, and America is borrowing from a country that does not hold elections? Have you seen that? Look at that logic. Does Africa, where we governed by elections? I have read the books of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I have never found anywhere where Aristotle told us or Plato told us that we should have elections every 5 years. Who brought this thing of election every 5 years? Who? Where? Show me one book in political science. I will tear my PhD into several parts, and I even give it to you free. If there is a place in political science which says you must have elections every 5 years in Plato Republic, the Republic, Nikolai Machiavelli, all the books that I've read that are here I've not seen one that tells you Kenya should have elections. For you to qualify to be democratic, you must have elections every 5 years. For Zimbabwe to be democratic, it should have elections every 5 years. Where? You have just copied and pasted what Britain and America have told you to do. You are parrots. You are parrots. China holds a meeting once in a year. But today, if you see China, China was the most poorest country with one rice scheme in the whole world that supplies rice and Mao Zedong from my country called Uganda. It was the only rice scheme that we knew China about. But today, you find all Africans loaded in 2 planes. If a plane falls in a Pacific Ocean or Indian Ocean, the number of Africans you will find are more than the Chinese themselves. They are going to buy Chinese food. In a period of 40 years, 30 years, China now is a great country. But are there elections in China? Think about it, Africans. We have been following every day. Britain comes to tell us, hold elections, hold elections. Have you ever asked them, what do these elections mean for us? Are we mature enough? I want to end by asking to allow now the panel to come in. I want to ask one question. In your country, wherever you are, does your president write 2 notes when he's going for elections? Does he write the losing note and the winning note? How many presidents in Africa and how many members of opposition, including Chagulanyi, my own country, the younger man that I surrendered? You know, for me, people call me, why don't you go to Uganda and stand for elections? I am 65 years old. I nurtured. When I started fighting Museveni, Chagulanyi was not born. He was still in the mother's womb. How can I compete with my younger grandson? He's not even the age of my firstborn. My firstborn, Miriam, is 42 years old with several children. So why should I compete with a younger man? The only thing is to guide the younger man and give him guidance. So don't ask me, why don't you go to Uganda? How do I compete with a man who cannot write 2 notes? A losing note and a winning note. He went in with 1, I'm going to win. And when you were not able to win, what happens? What happened? You saw what happened. Yes, anomalies are there. Yes, governments in Africa. It's very difficult to win an election in Africa. A sitting government to be defeated in Africa, you must have Angel Gabriel standing by you. Very few people can surrender power in Africa easily, including Kaunda, who has just been buried today, thinking he was surrendering power to a lumpen called that short guy. What is his name? I should not even glorify him because he molested Kaunda. It's a very stupid short president there who died a long time ago from Zambia, who put Kaunda in jail. An idiot, you know, who has never gone to school, but he grabbed the power because he had a problem. He was like a Morgan Changarai of Zimbabwe, a lumpen who goes around looking for sanctions to go and kill his people. I wish Morgan was here. And he was here, he saw, he lacked medicine. He lacked medicine. He lacked medicine. Yet he was calling for sanctions to kill Zimbabwe. There is another one called Wetshimani Kube. Another one, a stupid quack called Tendai Biti. A lumpen. These are people who Africa should not entertain to listen to. They went around looking for sanctions to kill their own people. Now today they are saying, oh, remove sanctions. Oh, you are the ones who should go to Zambezi River and swim with crocodiles. Yes, time has come for Africa to speak. And you younger generation, if you don't speak, don't blame me that I never told you. Yes, we have George Soros sponsoring. Look at, before I finish, look at what is happening in South Africa. Zuma must be regretting and remembering this face. I told Zuma in African Union in Addis Ababa in Marriott Hotel. I went to see Zuma and I told Zuma, your country has 1,967 NGOs funded by George Soros. Zuma said, what? I said, you didn't know? George Soros funds your government. You have opened a center there called Africa Litigation Center. It's funded by George Soros officially. You are surrounded by NGOs and you will collapse very badly. Zuma said, yeah, that stupid president is called Chiluba, Frederick Chiluba, stupid man. If we meet in hell or heaven, he should sit very far. He molested Kaunda. And I hope Kaunda today is going to ask him a lot of questions. So look at the situation. Zuma brought a situation that we see today. One of the mistakes that African countries should not do. And I'm warning African countries. I'm warning everybody. I am one of the few people who speak like Mugabe. I have no regrets. When they hated Mugabe, I stood up and I liked Mugabe. Yes, and I'm happy. What can you do? What can you do now? What? Will you kill me? I supported Mugabe in Britain. I told Tony Blair that you are doing something wrong. Dr. Matsanga, in the Labour Conference in Brighton, the only African on the south of Sahara, I stood up and said, point of order, it is wrong to isolate, because I started the same politics that Tony Blair started in Cambridge. The only problem is that I went to Canterbury. I'm an Anglican. I believe in the Anglican Church. And my heart was to study around Canterbury, which is different. So I told Tony Blair, one day, you should engage Mugabe. Don't use the elections as a benchmark. Engage Mugabe, don't isolate Mugabe. Now Tony Blair is begging Zimbabwe government to do some work. Look at the rubbish. Look at that nonsense. The problem of Africa is we don't like our own professors. We like the white professor. If a white professor was addressing this conference now, this Zoom, you know how many Africans would be there? There would be 1 million, even the website will collapse. But because Matsanga is from Uganda and black, and maybe doesn't speak the accent of the British, which I refuse to be assimilated. My children, all of the 80 children are assimilated. They are grown up. The last born is 22. They are assimilated. They talk as if they are having some fruits in the mouth. But me, I speak the real Ugandan English. The way Museveni speaks, I'm actually more organized on degree than Museveni. So that is not a problem. So, but we differ. We differ on democracy, but on security and other things. Under the pandemic, Museveni is correct. On Somalia, Museveni is correct. But when it comes to the deficit of type of democracy, we differ. And the basic thing is that two bulls cannot stay in one crowd, because you'll end up, anybody who has brought up cows, you'll end up going for one cow to produce from one. So one of us has to be somewhere. I am somewhere. And I've kept myself. May God help my children that one day they will realize the dream. So thank you very much, my fellow panelists. I want to thank you all. I want to thank the people of Africa. The question is now thrown to the floor. Do you need elections? Let me start. I want to introduce the panel. We have a guest from Harare, wherever he is, whether Harare or London. You know, with this Zoom, you can't know whether it is in Harare or London. One of the problems we have is the other time we interviewed Nnamdi Khan in May, we didn't know where he was coming from. So other people came and tried to, we didn't know, we don't know, we don't work for the government of Kenya. If the government of Kenya itself has to answer for its difficulties, we don't do the friendly policy of Republic of Kenya for us to answer. No, we can't answer. We are media. We approached to interview. We interviewed. We gave him a very big, over 1.2 million viewers on this platform. He's alive. He knows who lulled him, who told him to come to Kenya. He should tell his lawyer, and his lawyer should also come out and tell the world, so that we look for this person, whether Nigerian who has been lulling people to come, then he's intercepted in the air or intercepted at the airport. We want to know. Those are my questions if I was answering as a lawyer a brief for Nnamdi Khan. We want to know from London, where was he going? Who did he want to meet? We want to know all these things so that we can be able to fight. And we hope the Nigerian government knows the consequences of abducting people and kidnapping people. And I believe Mr. Buhari will try to go to London, to Charing Cross Hospital for medical attention. We are aware your doctors are there, so we know it is okay. Thank you very much. I will begin by Mr. Zingai from Harare. How are you? Test the microphone.
Thank you, Dr. Matsanga. I'm doing well. Thank you for this insightful discussion, and I like your philosophy. It's very unfortunate I've missed many of your Zoom meetings, but what you're saying actually is true. That's very true. The problem that we have in Africa is us, the African, especially in my country. We, the Zimbabweans, are an enemy to our own progress. One thing, I am an educationist. One thing I have noticed, the type of education that was left with us, like in Zimbabwe, we were given the British education. Their education was just simply to prepare a person who submits to them. So you would find, like I always give an analogy, I'll give it later on. The smartest people, whom you say they are the smartest people who get the A grades, they are not the ones who have got the impact in terms of development and whatever. Why? Because those people, they studied the education and they know that those whom we call the A grades are the ones who are easy to make puppets. That's why here in Zimbabwe, the opposition, this opposition thing is full of lawyers, all the educated people, and they are being used as puppets by the British, because they know that the one who is very educated is the easiest one to use. That's why even here in Zimbabwe, The people who own the money are not the ones who are very educated. Why? Because sometimes the education makes us foolish. It makes people foolish because you rely by the book, you don't look at the ground. And after all, when that education was designed, it was designed in a different culture. And it was brought to us and tried to fabricate this civilization that they are saying we are bringing we want you to be civilized, want you to have to have democracy and so forth. No, it's not like that. We had our own democracy, we had on our civilization, and everything that is troubling us in Africa doesn't belong to us. It's all borrowed. And it's either it was borrowed or it was imposed on us. We never knew there were elections until the white people came. Why? Elections are a tool of divide and rule. They know that once you have elections, there will be unrest. So there's no need for us to have elections, because in every nation in Africa, the elections are the root of all the wars that we have. Like Mugabe once said, no, we are going to have a one-party state. And America rose the loudest voice in the world saying, he is a dictator, he is a what. But in his philosophy, he was right. You know that if this mentality of elections will leave the people, then politics will become cleaner. Actually, if there are no elections, there will be no politics. Because politics simply means who is supposed to be doing what, who is supposed to be in the lead, who is supposed to be. So if these elections are removed and these people are like they're employed, maybe, or they get that thing on merit, like what the chiefs and the kings do. You go. I come from Chirumanzo. We are, of course, in the chieftainship. There's no one argues that we are the chiefs. No one argues that, because they know that, oh, these are supposed to be the chiefs, and whoever is raised in that family is raised in a way that they are channeled towards that. So in Africa, we don't know we're supposed to be running for politics. Every Jack and Jill want to be in politics, and they don't know how these things are done. You go to America, there's politics there, yes, but not everyone is involved like what we do in Africa, that if people go to the streets because of election, it will be chaos. It will be total chaos, right? We now go on to something else that they always say, the economy has collapsed, the economy has collapsed. We have some companies in America there, they mind their own business. They don't get into politics. But here in Africa, we don't want to mind our own business, to run our companies. We want to first run the president. Then we run our companies. That's why we are behind. We don't know what to look after. If you keep on paneling, polishing your tool, after some time it will be shining, isn't it? But if you put your tool that in the dust, then you first chase after something that does not belong to you. Your tool, when you come back, it will be dust, and it will be dusty and scratched. What I'm trying to say is we should mind our own business. If possible, let's start from scratch. Africa is rich. Africa is rich. Like in my country, we have platinum, we have many minerals, plenty of them. Diamonds, which these whites have been mining without us knowing, in Chiads were there. There are plenty. But we were made to be blind, and we were told that you are fools. Like in Zimbabwe, black people were called the Gudo, means baboon. We're baboons, you see? So, but when an African was labeled like that, they stopped thinking, and we became puppets. We don't think anymore. If we see a white person, we see a god. We see a god. So If we can move away from seeing all that, then we come back, we trust our leaders, we believe in our leaders, and they will listen to us. Because in psychology, there's something that is that we cannot resist in psychology. If you want to, if somebody is in the leadership, and you speak bad about them, don't expect them to treat you good. But if you try to show that you want to put positive input, even if you say no, but I think what you are doing here could be done this way, things will be done that way. But if you now stand up and say you are a fool, simply because you are given money by the Western people, they won't listen to you. You have declared a war. So these white people were very, very successful in dividing us and make us fight against each other. And we will not win this war until we realize what the white people did to us. Everything that we use in the world is coming from Africa. We give them as raw materials. We tell them to come and build companies here because we even have the manpower, the human resources. We do have. They don't want. Why? They want to keep us down. And they want to make sure that we stay poor. Yes. They want to make sure we stay poor. When we are poor, a person who is poor, a person who is hungry is easy to control. You simply demo some food in front, say, if you do this, I can give you this bun. Can you just kneel down and say, thank you, Papa? Then they kneel down and say, thank you, Papa. You're given a bun. The bun that you're given is worth 2 cents. What that person has taken from you is worth $1 million. Like what they did in Chiago when they started when they discovered that there was diamond. Can you imagine? They would bring a hole to a person saying, I'm giving you these 3 holes and I will get these stones that are lying around your field. They never educated them that these are diamonds, they have money.
Okay. Thank you very much, Genzai. You will have your other round. Thank you very much. You have brought up something very significant. And thank you very much. Don't go away. You will have another round
I am there.
Okay, thank you. Joseph Nyachama, Dr. Joseph Nyachama from Kenya. You have listened to myself. You have listened to Mr. Zingai from Zimbabwe. I believe you know that elections were a new thing to us. Africa used to select their people through consensus, not through a ballot, not through hatred, not through campaigns that expose the community. What do you say, Dr. Nyachama?
Thank you, Dr. Matsanga and my fellow panelists. And you have brought a very interesting narrative, which is deep in ideology. And you know, the guest design guy said that in their country, there are people who speak very good English. He calls them lawyers. And you know, as if they even listen to your proposition, they have already started to think, what do you have in mind? Dr. Matsanga, I don't want to lie, but this is a narrative that very realistic people need to think deeply. Because every nation is taken like an enterprise. And any enterprise must design and review all risk events that happen in that specific enterprise. A nation is an enterprise. And the question citizens need to ask themselves, what are those events that will make an enterprise, in this case a nation, not to proceed as a viable enterprise? I will tell you and my fellow panelists without any fear of contradiction One of those events, Dr. Matsanga, as you have rightly put it, is election as an event. And you know, those people who advocate for election as a changeover for their turn to lead is simply for personal interest. You talked about Socrates, Dr. Matsanga. Let's just review a bit what he said. You know, Socrates one time said, I am the wisest man alive because I know one thing no one knows. And the thing is that I know, but most elites in Africa, they think they know. And they think the normal citizens are charlatans who will simply follow them. That is why you see leaders, even in my country, saying, my followers. You know the people called followers? When did we meet? I tell you, I sign a contract that I am following your ideology. You call me your follower because I belong to your tribe. A tribalistic, hinged society can never succeed in the current model of elections. You talked about South Africa, Dr. Matsanga. When Mandela took over, he wanted to streamline the thinking of the people. That is why he went for one term. You know, he wanted to create a narrative so that people are given opportunity to lead freely and add value and change the lives of the people. What happens afterwards? The African leaders especially do not have a conviction. That is why Mandela said, I have cherished the ideal of a free and a democratic society where all people live in harmony with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I'm prepared to live for and achieve. And even need be, it is an ideal for which I'm prepared to die. And they led only for one term and they left. And they thought the subsequent leaders are driven by the same ideals. Some of the idiots we have in Africa do believe in nothing. That is why, in fact, Dr. Matsanga, this narrative is so deep, it needs not to be viewed casually. You see, most lawyers speak very good English, thinking they are thinking. They are not. Eloquency is not synonymous to wisdom. This is what, did you hear in Kenya, presentation in a court of law, where you hear people saying that was very powerful. What does powerful mean? Just because you have excited people on statements which do not add value, because you are very eloquent in English, people associate you with wisdom and will give you power. And that is why poverty has permitted the entire society of Africa. And for me, so that I give other panelists to contribute, it is an agenda, Dr. Matsanga, you are setting. And it is deep. It will be opposed by those who pretend to be thinking only to realize they are rearranging their prejudices. That is why you see some leaders, you think they are thinking. They are not thinking. They only rearrange their prejudices because their interests have changed. Let me conclude by saying we need to discern whether election as a risk event, whether a viable nation will be able to survive with such a level of risk. I think we need to begin this narrative And I want to thank you, Dr. Matsanga, that now you have set the agenda so that the discussion begins. For now, Dr. Matsanga, I submit.
Thank you. Arrogant eloquence is not wisdom. That's the key word I picked there. And there's a lady on the panel, Susan Mungai. She looks like my OG, old girl from London Guildhall University. I think a lawyer, we studied law. She studied law, she was a few years behind me in Calcutta House. Susan, are you there? I don't know whether she's just... Susan, are you there?
She's not connected.
Okay, fine. She must be listening. Thank you very much. Let me come to another guest. Usually comes here on the show, Ambassador Ghana Minor. We have discussed this issue of elections in Africa. My aim, why I keep on bringing this, is to ask my fellow Africans, do you really need to fight every 5 years? Because you want to elect something you don't know why you are electing. So I keep on bringing this. Every time I see Africa going towards a fragmented state, things like the things that are happening in Nigeria, they worry me. They worry every African. Nigeria is disintegrating at the fastest pace that it will soon be no more. And I'm sure someone will wake up and say, no, today I've taken it over. We are going back into removing the gains we got of a free and a fair departure after elections. Look at everybody in Nigeria has given up hope. A state has become a kidnapping state. It kidnaps its nationals. It has got even they say intercept. I think they have even a plane that intercepts. I don't know. Ambassador Maina, you are experienced ambassador. You have been on this work planet. Have you ever seen a plane that intercepts in air? But these are all that topic aside. Elections. Does Africa, do we need it? Ambassador.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the panel. It's a very good topic because always me and you have discussed about this election issue, and we know that this has never helped any country in Africa, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, if I ask those fellow panelists, is the election is putting the food on the table of the common citizen? I think no. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
It's not helping a common citizen. But in fact, the election is drowning even the citizen, because the little money the government is supposed to do, at least the services to help those citizens to live, to have a better life, they are taking this money to go and do rubbish election that is not even helping. And at the end of the day, we come to understanding that this election per se is just a distraction, and it's making the countries or the continent in general is going backward. What am I saying that? Because now it's very rare to see any country in Africa who have an agenda for the next 5, 10, 20 or 30 years, the agenda to follow and meticulously follow, at least to serve the people, to make sure that when we talk about the country, we talk about how can we do better, how can we ease the life of the fellow citizens. The only place I see it right now is only China and UAE. Because when you go to UAE, you see their agenda. They are telling you agenda 2035, 2040, 2050, and what can the government will do services to make sure that the life of the common population being better. But if you go back to Africa, Dr. Matsanga, any country, you will see them for the next 5 years, they are planning for the next election. So finally, election is a project. I don't understand. It becomes just a machine of a waste of time. You know that election is the one has today bring in any country ethnic problem is election. The population by say don't have a problem, but electoral people, those leaders, they come and put the hatred inside the mind of the population to tell this you are ethnic and this is not my ethnic, we don't like you. And it's just election and politics bring that. But when you go to the common citizen, you see them in one place, they live in peace. Until those people for election come and separate them at night to say that this person is this one and this is bad and this is a good one, he don't like you, and if his people come to power, they will marginalize you. And the emphasis of this ethnical group to make sure that they can separate people at least to pass the election. Every country when you go is the same thing. So election has just brought poverty in Africa because some of the countries are even borrowing money to go for elections. And we all know that in any country in Africa here, when you calculate the amount of money they are spending in election, can build minimum 2 biggest hospital or 2 biggest university in the country. So imagine that if in 50 years of our time, if we are building 2 hospitals, in 10 times we are having 10 bent hospital in the country that we don't even need to talk about any medical services around Africa, but we don't have it. Every time we borrow money, we spend this money, we go back, we talk about election for the next 5 years, who's going to be in the power. But is this thing is helping a common citizen, Dr. Matsanga? That's the question I'm asking to the panel. Is this thing what we talk called election is helping the common citizen to have a normal life, at least a happy life? At least to feel that me too, I am someone in my country and the government is doing something for me. But we find out that the countries who's enjoying the population who is enjoying their government services are the countries who don't have election finally. Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, UAE, China, all those countries. When you go even, you go to Japan, the election is not something considered. Singapore is not. Malaysia, election don't have too much value. Any country, when you see that the election don't have too much value, now their leaders become the workers because now they will be selected by merit. This is where they are doing the job. But right now, our leaders are not selected by their merit. They are selected by the lies they give to the people. And it's making that every time we are becoming poorer and poorer because even our mind is not thinking because we don't think what services are we giving to our people. This situation is becoming so difficult that even last time when we discussed it in this panel, we asked ourselves, is election helping Africa? Is Africa need election? We said, let us talk about it. And we need to continue to talk to see that if there is a way we can change. Election doesn't mean democracy. If someone tell me election is democracy, I don't believe. Let the person come out to prove me that election is democracy. You can't tell me that African countries, they have democracy more than the UAE. Because it's a country that if there you have a problem, the government will judge you according to your problem. But in those countries, we believe democracy, if you have problem, you belong to one political party, nothing's happened to you. So mean that election is not democracy. We are emphasizing, for us, we are even wasting our time. For me, I can call election is a football game. People go, they are happy, they spend their money, and few hours they come back, and the happiness is gone, and the reality is there, and they are expecting the next football. So when are we going to stop that? Is our political components in Africa, did we need to think? Because for us, we think that changing president is changing country. No. The Queen Elizabeth in UK, for how many years? More than 50 years. The UK is growing. The population, they're happy, satisfied. It's not the chair of the president, but the value, the way we African, we are taking those presidents as demigod. We need to take this energy on them to show that nobody is interested in this seat, because now the value we are giving on those seats, that's what making it more important. How many people you see that when there is the election of members of House of Assembly, senators, people are not fighting too much. People are not separated. But when it comes to presidential, people are fighting because the seat is, they make it more valuable. But if the seat don't have value, like Ethiopia, who think about the president, Dr. Matsanga? Ethiopia have a president. Germany have a president. Who know who's the president of Germany? Many countries is not important. So when we take out the value of the seat, we put it on the people to develop the country, nobody will be interested in politics. Last time we was talking about Tanzania. The late John Pombe Magufuli has started to give a common citizen his right, and he's starting building the country, making sure that many people start losing hope with the politics because they don't need again fighting for anything. Whatever you want for your county or your locality or sub-county is being done, and things has been done accordingly. So even those politicians, the oppositional parties, they feel that they don't need anything to do because things are moving. So now we come to understand that politics per se cannot fix the problem. I surrender, Dr. Matsanga.
Do African elections add value? That's all. That's what Ambassador Maina has just asked. Do they add value? Does it bring food to your table? How many people have got food because they elected very nicely? They elected the president. Any of you on the panel? How many get free food? Do you just get it? Or after the election, you go and struggle. At times you come back home hungry. Does it add value? Or it brings social inequality, discrimination, ethnic disturbances, tribalism? You see? Even, let's look at the tribes. Look at Uganda, for example. Apart from one MP from my own constituency, my own cousin brother, Bosco, John Bosco Nambeshi, who is, you are this thing of Bob Wine, what is it called? National Unity Party. The rest of the MPs are from one tribe. So what election is that? Go to Zimbabwe. Go look at the way South Africa is breaking to pieces. The Zulu are saying, you touch Zuma and you will see. Touch. And then in fact, Zuma could be the breaking point of South Africa. Because what is happening in South Africa today, the courts are being used as a regime change mechanism. Recently in Zimbabwe, somebody wanted to overthrow the Chief Justice. In Kenya, they have captured the power from Uhuru Kenyatta. Why are we keeping quiet about this? I see Dr. Nyechama is not talking about it. They have captured it here. The judges are ruling us. But you had the so-called election in Kenya. But the judges in Kenya are the master. You cannot even pass a bill of eating food properly and washing your hands, and it goes through the court. Somebody will go and challenge and say the hands were wrongly washed. Therefore, cancelled order. Washing hands. You know there is now corona. You must know how to wash hands. If you start a way of washing hands, someone in Kenya goes to court and says, you did not wash like this. He washed like that. The courts will rule in favor of that. Everywhere, courts have taken over elections. So, does Africa need elections anymore? A court describes the president of a country like Kenya, calls him Kenyatta. Judges called the president this Uhuru Kenyatta. Yet we are the ones calling my lord the judge. So do we need elections in Africa? Shoni Wesonga. If you are still sleeping, then Samuel Olesisana, cut it short. Answer my question first. Do you need elections in Africa? Then tell us.
Very well. Thank you so much, Dr. David Matsanga, my colleague, panelist, and everyone who is tuned in to this program. Indeed, Dr. Matsanga, this is a very insightful program, just like my other panelists have alluded to. To answer your question, first of all, Dr. Matsanga, I suppose that Africa doesn't really need elections for reasons that I'm just about to submit. One is because elections in Africa have been made to be a zero-sum game, where now you see the kind of competition, the kind of contestation that we are having as a continent, as individual parties, and also people who are contesting for an election have made this to be a do or die. It's like there's nothing after election generally in Africa, and that is why today you see every political party, every individual who is really contesting for an election in Africa have made this like it is something that they must get at whatever expense. So, Dr. Matsanga, when you look into all these scenarios, they point to the effect that perhaps it is time for Africa to try and review processes towards how they can get the leadership into place without necessarily actually carrying out an election. Because again, like you rightly put it when you gave us the introductory remarks, Dr. Matsanga, today in the African continent, nobody who gets into an election has prepared or is prepared really to lose. We have a very rigid mindset of individuals or contestants who get into an election with a mindset that it is a must for them to win. And none of them is really prepared really to lose in that particular election. So what does it speak for people, for example, who are supporting your bid? When you go into an election and you hear pronouncements that leaders come out and say, we are only going to lose this election if we are going to be rigged. In essence, what you are trying to tell your supporters is that we must win regardless of the outcome. So generally, Dr. Matsanga, I think we need to realign the mindset of the African people. We need to realign the mindset of the leaders, especially those who are contestants in various for various political offices, Dr. Matsanga, so that they get to understand really what election means in itself, because we have treated election as an event instead of a process. Today, you come to Kenya, for instance, the electoral body IEBC comes out and says we are not technically prepared for an election, but at the same time, they continue the program towards having the same election come 2022. You saw what happened in 2017 when the IEBC chair Wafula Chebukati came out and at some point said, I'm not ready to oversee this election. I'm not prepared because I'm not reading from the same script with my fellow commissioners, because some commissioners have resigned. It is the same thing. So where did we end as a country? I mean, we ended up having an election that was contested in the Supreme Court. So even as we get into 2022, you know, those people who are so keen to create anarchy, to create chaos, to make sure that this country, for example, Kenya, is going to be ungovernable, are taking the notes from, for example, the institutions that are very critical, like IEBC. Yes.
Jawish, holding it, Mr. G. Ben Okeke. Mr. Okeke has brought a very good suggestion as you add on, and is coming to complement what we are saying. He says, Dr. Matsanga, I guess politicians in Africa have resorted to monetary politics. Let us remove money, then politicians will win constituencies because of their input and the capacity. Do you agree with Mr. Okeke?
100%, Dr. Matsanga, because again, when you bring the aspect of resources, the aspect of monies that actually politicians are hoarding now to actually use the same during elections, to a big extent, Dr. Matsanga, I would say it compromises the integrity and the credibility of the election in itself. That is why you see today IEBC was even in the news proposing or suggesting that they are putting plans in action to ensure that they are going to sieve politicians, especially on the funding and resourcing money that they use in the campaigns to make sure that there's not going to be porous circulations of money in our country when we head or during the election, because again, it is these monies that come, Dr. Matsanga, that is not accounted for, that normally compromises the integrity and credibility of an election. So I agree with that panelist that these are some of the things we really need to fix, Dr. Matsanga, even as we prepare to head into an election in Kenyan's case. Dr. Matsanga, there's another scenario I would want to give. You look into the scenario in the African continent today. Why is it that we are talking about an election when people are not prepared? Even those who are in power are not prepared to relinquish power. It's almost unimaginable that you'll have a sitting government actually removed from office when they feel like it is not time for them actually to give up. So in itself, we are making this election to be a process within which the people can democratically elect a government that is going to serve them. They can change governments. But again, you have people who are in power, people who are in office, people who have outstayed their welcome in power, yet they're not ready really to relinquish power. So in itself, Dr. Matsanga, we are borrowing this election concept to the African context, which is not working completely. Because again, like the US, and like what happened just in the concluded general election in the US, I mean, America, for example, has lived it to be an example of what democracy or mature democracy is, save for what Donald Trump did, of course, when he was defeated just the other day when we had the election there. But in Africa today, you have presidential contenders who are going into an election and even prepare to announce themselves as winners. I mean, you have a referee who is managing this election, but you have a contender or contestants who are ready even to announce themselves winners even before the actual announcement of the results. You have contestants and political parties, Dr. Matsanga, even setting up parallel tallying centers, the PTCs. You have seen that happen in Kenya, you have seen that happen in Ghana, you've seen that happen in Uganda, you've seen that happen in most parts of the African countries really during elections, that IEBC or electoral commissions in those respective countries are tallying the votes, but again, individual parties and contestants are already having their own parallel tallying centers and announcing their own results. So what we expect of our people really who are supporting the candidature of various political parties or individuals in this election, Dr. Matsanga. So I will submit, Dr. Matsanga, that it's time maybe we need to reconsider and review really whether this concept of having an election in the African continent is working or not. And it is my submission, Dr. Matsanga, that so far it is not working, and it has proved that perhaps we need to do a different thing altogether. I submit, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much. Ben Okeke says he disagrees. He says elections actually Africa needs elections to get opinions of the people. But Ben Okeke, I want to ask you, for example, you come from Biafra. What opinion can you get to give to who? You have been asking, your opinion in Biafra is to go and have an independent Biafra, have a referendum to decide. But Okeke, you have been saying this for a long time, and the Buhari does not listen to you. So you are giving an opinion to who? Okeke, whom are you giving an opinion? No, honestly. You are
it is actually one thing. It is one thing to give opinion.
You are a Biafran.
And the second,
how are you giving opinion to a man who kidnaps people? Because he has got power.
Finally, you want to eat your cake and have it. We don't understand.
Buhari told us that he can finish terrorism. Boko Haram in 100 days, finished. The Nigerians came out. The entire people came out and said, hallelujah, we have got a tall general, 6.1 feet. Now you are saying you collect opinion and give to who? Does Buhari listen to your opinion? So when you say you are electing, Buhari does not need, he hasn't even listened to your referendum call. He doesn't want.
By the way, we African, we need to congratulate Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. He's the only president has accepted defeat and called his partner to congratulate and step down. He's deserved our round of applause, Dr. Matsanga. Even though Nigeria is not doing well.
He went away peacefully. Maybe that one you could give opinion. But this one, Buhari, you can't. In fact, you can't even find Buhari. We don't know whether he's still alive. You know. So when you tell me opinion, Biafrans are saying he is not the real one. So which of who will listen to your opinion? Okay. So please, elections in Africa are a waste of time and money. We could utilize that money and energy and bring hatred. Sean Wesonga. The hatred in Kenya, I want you to concentrate on the hatred that we see in Kenya.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matsanga.
Ruto versus Uhuru Kenyatta. There is a battle line there now. You see the battle lines are drawn. And you are telling us you are going for elections next year. Surely, tell me.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matsanga. And nothing can be further from the truth, because when you look even geographically on how the most African countries are positioned, you realize that these boundaries, which were based on tribes and regionalism, were implemented by the colonialists, and they went further to give us a decoy in the name of democracy. This is something that has not been working for many African countries. Barely even 5 years into their independence, most countries like Nigeria and many more were actually fell into a state of anarchy due to these divisive elections. And as we are right now, you realize that most African countries actually spend billions of shillings just trying to conduct elections. And immediately after each election, we look forward to having the next one and also having court cases in disputed election and all that. So you realize that as a people, we spend too much energy, we spend too much of our resources fighting invisible wars in terms of elections, who has won the election, who has been rigged out, and all that kind of nonsense that the European brought onto us as the African people. My good brother from Harare mentioned something very important in his opening remarks, that we, the people of Africa, had our own system of governance before the white men came into our continent. Why have we abandoned these ways of governance and in return have fallen for the system that has been brought to us by the white man? Because this system that we have called democracy only serves for the best interest of the Western powers and those who support them. It has never worked for our people. In fact, elections in Africa are the cause of destruction of property, death, and all that kind of darkness that comes with it. So therefore, to me, I think we do not have democracy in Africa. And in that matter, having election after every 5 years does not mean that we have democracy. Rather, we should look at how efficient are those elections. When you look at a country like Eswatini, it's only until recently when we had demonstrations that we had for the first time violence coming from that particular small country in Southern Africa. And I do believe this is due to the growing encroachment of NGOs and regime change monies that is going around Africa, that we had such kind of stories coming from Swaziland. But above that, I believe these are people who have been organizing themselves. These are people who have been governing themselves without the notion of democracy that is always peddled by the Western powers and the Western democracies. And you realize that a country like Swaziland, you might find statistically, it hasn't had any violence or any death or any destruction of property which is related to an election. But here in Kenya, you can always read the mood of the country. Already people are up to arms, preparing for the next election. The deputy president, in fact, is not even concentrating on service delivery. The other day, the president was working till midnight to ensure that he launches the projects that have been delivered by the various departments in government, while the deputy president is moving around Africa in the neighboring countries, mobilizing funds to finance his election next year. So that tells you that in Africa and in Kenya, more specifically, elections have become a matter of do and die, in that if someone is rigged out of election in an election, or maybe the results do not go in line with their expectations, then we are more likely to plunge the country into chaos. And for that matter, Dr. Matsanga, the situation in Kenya is something of concern. Our security agencies should actually look out for the politicians who are more likely to cause chaos. And yesterday, the Ministry of Interior actually mapped out areas which have been branded the hotspots for next year's general election. And that tells you that even as we speak about elections and democracy in Africa, it is already a boiling problem. And if not put into check, then Africa is not likely to progress and be able to focus on other important things. If we keep on talking about elections and also the aftermath of election, where we are embroiled in battles in courts and raising tensions amongst our citizenry. I submit, Dr. Matsanga. You're muted, Dr. Matsanga.
My people, technical team, look at the waiting room. So many people are waiting. They are calling this side. Thank you very much. And I would try to bring in Javani Karanja as we summarize this show. Yes, there are so many people waiting in the waiting room. Please bring them on. Now we come to the real reality. How much does an election in Africa cost? What is the cost of that election compared to that money being used to build a hospital, a full-time, well-equipped hospital that even transplants hearts and can create another human being? If we looked at ways, can we look at new ways, new methods in which elections Africa can do without holding election that cost billions and billions, $2 billion, $3 billion, $10 billion. That money could be utilized to build roads. Is there another way we can think of having a just society, elect our people like we used to do previously, and change a method? Can we have a hybrid? Javani Karanja.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Matsanga, and to our viewers, and to my fellow panelists, and for the conversation that you're having this afternoon. I agree entirely with the statements made by previous contributors that election in Africa is a waste of time, because we end up fighting, we end up destroying property, and as you remember, in this country, in 2007, property was destroyed. People were burnt in churches in the name of election. Therefore, if we have, for the years that we have been having these elections, since we embraced this thing called democracy, it has not benefited us. It is time we shut and we come in on table and discuss and have a new discussion on how we can now have a different way without really going for this cyclic system of electing leaders after every 5 years. We can have a system where we can put in measures to ensure that the leaders that we have in place, we have a way of checking and balancing and holding them to account, and some oversight roles being done so that we ensure that they are accountable and they deliver to the people of Kenya. To me, that is what matters most, so that we can have a way of ensuring that those leaders who don't deliver, who don't fulfill the mandate that were given by the people who they represent, are shown the door. Because the problem with these elections that we hold regularly in our African continent, we end up having leaders who, after getting to office, they manipulate the system and they end up having some ways of maintaining power and staying in these positions for years, as it has happened in Uganda. We have a president who has been in power for more than 30 years. Therefore, this election, to some extent, it is prone to manipulation, it is prone to unfairness, it is prone to a kind of rigging. Therefore, unless we have a system where we can guarantee ourselves a credibility, verifiable, and fairness in the election, I think that is the only time we can run for this election. But as it is now, as Africans, we are not ready. As Africans, we are not prepared. As Africans, we are dealing with a new phenomenon of elections, because in previous years, even before independence, our forefathers used to have a way of getting the elders in positions, and that way they were able to govern themselves politically. And in that way, I think that is the best way. We need to have a way of ensuring that we select or we have these leaders in position based on merit, based on qualification. But when we go for this vote, we end up getting leaders who maybe have the power of the money, who have the power of manipulation, corrupt leaders being elected. Because at the end of the day, we are dealing with a new thing. We are dealing with an event that is not ours. Therefore, it is time for us as Africans to understand that if this election is just there to cause mayhem and havoc and wars, there's no need to go for this kind of election. Because when you look at it, even as I take an example, in our country, Kenya, the problem that benevers this country is tribalism and corruption. And it is all culminating from these elections, from dirty and politics of intolerance that we have in this country. The problem of tribalism is driving because of elections, because our political elites, they divide the so-called supporters based on their tribal lines. Therefore, we end up intoxicating, we end up bringing hatred and the wars in the name of election. Therefore, it is high time we understand that we need a way of ensuring we have leaders in positions, but not necessarily after every 5 years. We can also have leaders being in power for almost for a period of time, provided we have a mechanism of ensuring that we can hold them accountable and we can maybe show them the door if they fail to deliver. But this system of going for these cycles after every 5 years, look at our country today. We have the Deputy President William Ruto, who is campaigning since 2017 instead of delivering the mandate that he was elected to do by the people of Kenya. He is busy campaigning. The problem we have in this country is politics. If we do away with politics, if it happened that we had no elections in 2022, people could be busy doing other productive things in the country. But in these days, everybody is thinking about re-election, how they will get to office. Those who failed in the last general election, they are planning on how to get re-elected in the coming elections. Therefore, at the end of the day, nobody is thinking on how to develop the country. Nobody is thinking about the next generation. Everyone is thinking on how to get to these offices because it's an avenue to enrich themselves. Therefore, at the end of the day, we see these politics, these elections, and that is why everybody, when you, as statistics have shown, as we go to as time goes, the number of aspirants, the number of people who are warming up for electoral positions keep on increasing as time goes. Therefore, at the end of the day, we might have even 1,000 people running for this political position, because it has come out clearly that the number of people who run for political offices keep rising after every general election, and they are not coming because they are offering alternative. They are not coming because they are offering solutions to the problem facing the people of African continent. They are just coming and positioning themselves to run for this position politicians, because they have seen a window, they have seen a loophole where they can go and enrich themselves. Therefore, if elections in Africa is about enriching and getting wealth, getting some people in places where they can get wealth, where they can go and create wealth, this is not the right way to go. We need a system where we can have leadership and servant leadership and trickling down to the people of African continent. And that can only happen when we have a way of electing leaders or selecting leaders based on merit, and then having a way of ensuring that they toe the line. Thank you, I submit.
Thank you very much. The panel, I believe we have done our job as Africans. And I believe we have said it time and time again. The views of those who want elections and those who don't want vary. I don't know whether Mr. Great is the same one. Do you have anything to say? The person with the phone, Great?
Hello. Yes, Dr. Matsanga.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin, but my phone name is Great. I was commenting on your Facebook page, but I thought it wise to buttress my own opinion that I said that we need election in Africa. The reason not just in African continent. Can we look at what is happening in USA? Can we look at what is happening in the Western world? We complain about colonialism, we complain about so many things, but there are good things that we have to emulate, even when we are Africans. There are things the Westerners learn or emulate from Africans as well. So election, I think, is part of the things that we're going to learn, because in every government, it's a structure. But I'm going to limit my example to Nigeria. Like you asked, if Biafrans are asking about referendum, definitely we have a kind of an autocratic, I won't say Muhammadu Buhari is a Democrat or something like this, but I am of the general opinion that elections should be free, fair, and transparent. How do we get this? Reason why we don't have free and fair election is because, one, election is being monetized. People use money to buy votes. Then a lot of people have contact in terms of godfatherism in Africa. These are things that we have to do away in our politics. And you, being a politician or someone who ever wish to get a political office, should work for it. Not just like people see you or you earn it by just your resources. It should be, what have you done to the community? What have you done to the constituency whereby you seek people to vote for you? If you don't have these views, or if you don't have this chance for people to say, okay, I'm going to vote Dr. Matsanga because he has done 1, 2, 3. And this will encourage human capital development, one. Secondly, why we also have a kind of manipulation in our election is because people believe and wait till election time before they start their campaign, because they believe that they can use money, they can use resources, or they can use their contact to get to the office. Now, if peradventure, or if we want to overturn this, like Professor Lumumba said in his last lecture on Friday, said that those who have power in Africa don't know how to use it, whereas those without the power, or those who know how to manage the power, don't have power. So if we are going to make sure that we have an election that is very transparent, we must ensure that there is no monetary attachment to election. If you can campaign and have a clear winning of 80% that your constituency voted for you, I guess there won't be any kind of manipulation in such election. Whereas Africa, due to they have like 50-50, 60-40, or a slight chance of winning, whereby giving it a room for INEC officials or people who manage these elections to maybe add a kind of zero, because if you have 100 voters and someone came and add zero at the last, it makes it 1,000. Thereby, the margin will rise. So what will be more concerned is how do we make election transparent? There are more modernized ways these days to make election more transparent, easy, and not even stressless. We talk about electronic voting. We talk about how to engage every citizen. Like in Nigeria today, those in diasporas don't vote. Only people in Nigeria, because they cannot manipulate those that stays in diaspora if there are electronic voting. And immediately, the structure of election in Nigeria, it goes from constituency to the local government to the state, and this takes a kind of, you are taking a transportation from the local constituency to the state government, from the state government to the Abuja. And at the cost of this transportation, there might be a kind of manipulation. How do we do away with all these things?
Why, Mr. Why don't we use that money? You are transporting votes from Enugu to Abuja.
Yes.
Why don't you use that money even to put a road between Port Harcourt and Enugu?
Okay, fine. Dr. Matsanga, I will ask.
No,
I have a question for my friend there, Dr. Matsanga.
Yes,
I will
have a question for him.
Why do
I have
you
a question for him?
First of all, Mr. Great, you have contradicted yourself. You say we can have election, but election without people knowing why they are going to elections. Is it working?
That is why I said that before we go into election, or someone who wish to be voted for, you have to campaign vigorously to earn trust from the people. That the reason why we have manipulation in election is because there are slight winning in most of the elections we have in Africa. But if there are cases of a clear winning, I will give you an example of one man in Anambra, which is Ifeanyi Uba, from a newly formed party. You understand? But he has a landslide winning of the opponent, even when the parties are major political parties in Nigeria. Why did he win? Because there are a clear winning that nobody can manipulate this. If you come to Anambra State, APGA is in government today. Why did APGA win even when we have PDP, APCs, and all the rest? It's because there are clear winning in some of these political parties, even though I will say there are no transparency.
I have a question for my friend, Dr. Matsanga.
Okay, let me just, if what I'm trying to say here is just like, let us look for a way to do away with money in politics and a kind of manipulation, not just grabbing election totally. That's my opinion.
Can I ask him a question, Doctor?
Yeah, Mina, you can ask me.
My brother, we are in Africa.
Yes.
Africa have priorities. Okay. I don't know which country do you live. We are living in a country that's some of the area, they don't have power, they don't have common water to drink. You are telling us to design some application how to deliver packages like Amazon. You are taking it on different planet. We are telling you that the strategy we have put in Africa here for this election is not even there. Let us not bring it. Let us solve the basic problem. I know in the state you are coming from right now, when you go there, some people have difficulties to get pure water. They have to dig the borehole because the government cannot satisfy simple basic.
Okay.
You agree with me? Some of the local government you are coming from, there is not even a common healthcare center that if someone is not feeling well today, take him today, they can treat him. You are talking to us about free, fair election, all those things. You are taking us into 2050. We are in 21. Our problem is, if the money we are expending today on this election, do we have the way to divert it to something meaningful to the people? This is our question, Dr. Matsanga is asking. This is the question Mr. Joseph raised. This is the question our brother from Zimbabwe raised. Do we have the strategy to make sure that instead of focusing, wasting our time, years and years election, dividing people? If today you go to Nigeria, people are divided from this is the northerner, this is the southerner, it's the same election as democracy has brought it. Because everybody want to be there, and in order to be there, he have to build a strong power with his people to show that these people, they are not good. It's the same election has brought these things in Africa. Everybody agree with me, Dr. Matsanga. No, in any African country, the situation we are having, this election and democracy has bring a division. People in Europe or America, they don't have more ethnic group. So for them, it's easy to come together to work. But now you and an Igbo man today and a Fulani, you guys become really, nothing is working together. Am I right or wrong? But when we go deeply, it's not the common people who are problem. It's the leaders brought this problem to the population. Am I right or wrong? And they brought this problem because they need the power. They want to stay in power. They want to divide people. They want to stay on. They want to loot money. So, and now you are asking us again to go and support them. How are we going to support them, my brother? This is my question to you.
Okay. If you are asking me.
Yeah, we don't have much time left.
Okay.
So,
Dr. Matsanga, can I just say one thing? Can I just say one thing to Mina? Mina, if we don't have election in Africa, how are you going to get people that will do the basic amenities that you are talking about? How are you going to maybe map out money for the borehole, for water project, for the road construction? How are you going to do that even when you don't have a process to select
Where is
someone?
China? Where is China? Where is UAE? Where is Saudi Arabia? Where is Kuwait? Where is Qatar? Where is Singapore? All those countries, they are one of the best countries. There's Africa combined cannot win them. We are collecting money from China. China is helping us. They don't have election. Do they have election in China?
We have such in Nigeria, whereby we have traditional rulers.
I'm talking about normal one like China.
No, these are what we are talking about is just like dynasty, or come to a political party, they will bring out one person to rule them. And the case of communists,
it's not working. It's not working.
Even if it's working, what happens to US? I made a reference.
So finally, why you are referring to US that the one they teach you is not working? Take the other one you have not tested. These white people, they teach you, but it's not working with you. Why referring to them then?
Don't you think that if we resort to something like communists, a kind of leadership in Middle East, it will be even worse than what we think, because most people will enter into power and they will not allow any other person to come up or even to relinquish such post to some other person, because they have accumulated such power within them that the political elites have entrusted in them.
I have no question, Dr. Matsanga. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Great, you have really lost it. We have Qatar in the Middle East. Does it have elections?
UAE.
And I am sure the airline you like to fly when you are going back to Port Harcourt or Onitsha or Enugu or Abuja is Emirates. Do they have election?
Sure.
No, wait.
Okay.
What we are saying is election is a foreign concept that arrived on us when we were not ready. The first coup in Nigeria, where Baba Tafawa Balewa was assassinated, you know, it was after they said election. Have you forgotten you are no editor like me? You know, Aronzi went down to take up to remove the government because of there was a bad election. People complained. They didn't want that person to be the leader. They wanted this one. Brought a coup. Nkrumah lost a government after the elections. You remember, Nkrumah was viewed as a communist. Some people manipulated the generals, took Nkrumah down. Obote in Uganda, we lost the first government. Idi Amin, because it started with elections. People said Obote had moved to the left, banning all political parties and no more elections. They overthrew Obote. Uganda went to the dogs. Well, how many examples do you want me to give you? There are very many. In Ghana, you have seen how many people have killed each other, to the extent that Rawlings came up and surrounded people, killed all of them. Sankara came up to power. Sergeant Doe in Liberia went and slaughtered Tubman. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
We should not forget. We should not forget history that elections in Africa have made us lose so many good people. Nimeri, King Idris. You know who King Idris? Gaddafi went and slaughtered Idris. You remember? And took over power. It's elections. Elections in Africa have been very instrumental in conflicts. Emperor Bokassa, Central African Republic. You remember? Mobutu Sese Seko, Patrice Lumumba disappeared from the planet after elections. You have forgotten that? Let's go. There are so many examples I can give you in Africa where people perished because of the word elections. And since then, we have not learned lessons. We are still the same people. We are still getting daggers. Chamisa is sharpening his dagger towards Mnangagwa. He cannot even greet Mnangagwa. He cannot shake his hand because of an election. Do we need it today? That Kasimoro, genuine small person there, who cannot fit even to rule a cattle deep in the village. He can't be a leader of Zimbabweans who are more educated than himself.
Yeah.
You see? Do we look at what Buhari is doing to you?
Okay.
Look at what is happening in the Buhari regime. Buhari came to power, promised people that Jonathan, good luck, Jonathan cannot do better than a former general, a 5-star or 6-star. Can I give him 7-star? Who has slaughtered more people than even any other president on the planet. Look at what is happening in your country. In Nigeria, with a population of 200 million people. Okay. We have lost it. We can't be productive. We can't buy our own, they can't buy goods, we can't sell goods. People are divided over because of elections. Call it a referendum, it is still election. People want a referendum to go away. 100 million Igbos want to say bye-bye because things cannot work. They were led by their chief. They say we better go back to the chief. In Uganda, my country, because some people think I'm Kenyan, I'm a Ugandan. In my country, Uganda, the kingdom still holds us. Mr. Bob Wine has just won an election in a kingdom. Maina, you're a frequent traveler into this country. You have seen that the MPs, apart from my brother, my cousin brother, the rest of the MPs speak one language. So, of his party. Now you tell me that you call that an election and an opposition. Where is the opposition here? Where is the government in Africa which can say, I asked one question, as I give you 1 minute each to wrap up your case, don't pass 1 minute. I ask my question. Is there a president or a leader of opposition you have heard of in Africa who writes 2 speeches? The winning and the losing. If you have one, Joseph Nachama, tell me. 1 minute.
Dr. Matsanga, thank you very much. I like the perspective of Maina. In fact, that there is a lot of wastage in Africa caused by elections in 2 fronts. One, the actual cost in carrying out elections. Number 2, the manner was lost because in Africa, the entire 5 years, people are in campaign. Have you ever asked yourself, how do those people attend rallies? How do they eat? How are they productive? They are held hostage by people who are mediocre, who don't have interest for their country. For me, Dr. Matsanga, what Africa lacks is not the resources. Africa lacks resourcefulness. How happens that an ambassador is more effective? It is because he's nominated, not elected. Let's adopt a different model like nomination. Number 2, to end, I think my 1 minute is almost. Mr. Great said that let us emulate the Western because they have. How happens? We emulate democracy. We even never emulate how to make cars. In Africa, there are millions of cars. No one car is made in Africa. In Africa, we produce children. How happens that we never produce any product? The fact that we produce children means we have capacity to produce.
Why? Okay, thank you. You made your point.
Thank you and Maina because let us have a new model.
Yes.
Even through nomination.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matsanga.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyachama. We produce children, but we can't produce a single toothpick. You are talking of a car, but we have a lot of trees in Africa, but we can't produce toothpick. That takes out. we buy toothpick from China. Are you not ashamed? Zingai from Zimbabwe, 1 minute.
Thank you, Dr. Matsanga, and I enjoyed this. Thank you for the panel. Mr. Great, there is something that you seem to be missing here. You know why people are corrupt? If a person gets into power through corrupt ways, by corruption or something that is corrupt, we don't mean only money. Anything bad is corrupt, according to the definition of the word corruption from the dictionary. Something that is bad, spoiled, right? So you talked about people are being stopped from using money when it's time for elections. No, that's not the way. They will always use money because Africans are greedy of money. So if you just like I said, maybe you missed when I said something before initially. I mean earlier on, saying if you put something, hang something like this, then you tell a person to vote for you, they will vote for you, and that's because of that. We have seen in many cases idiots being put into power. You understand? But these elections, however, they have done more harm than good to Africa because hatred, killing has come from this election. And we do elections today. The next 5 years, it will be killing, 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 killing. We start another one, and this time, each time we do elections, everything it becomes more grievous and grievous. So we must simply stop it. We focus on those who are leading. Let's work with them. Like I said, if you work against them, like what Chamisa is doing, he is working against Mnangagwa. And how can Mnangagwa smile at him? But if he works with Mnangagwa, like what Monzora did, Monzora is working with Mnangagwa, but he's MDC, he's opposition. But he's working with Mnangagwa, he's given even platform to give speeches at special functions because he's working with the president. They are waiting for 2023 to come, but mostly those things are not found. That maturity is not present. So we should simply stop it. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. Maina, quickly.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. As we were saying about this election, for me, my humble proposal to our African system, we need to see that if there is a way we can, every country can sit down and draw an 5, 10, 15, and 20 years agenda that really our population among common mwananchi, the way they call it in Kenya, is in need. The services needed by the common mwananchi, and we get into business to do them. Because the moment we go back, we turn our faces to face the life of the common mwananchi, we find out that political issues and election and all those things are not really useful, because we will think that there is more needed to do on the local communities by the people than come in the capital and start talking about election, all those things. I am ready to make sure that in the next future, we do our best at least to advise many countries, the population, to understand that democratic system and election has failed them, and they need to see if there is a way they can implement a different sessions. Because the more those people are election, when we come to an understanding, Dr. Matsanga, you will never realize a project in 5 years. Talk less, maybe 10 years. It's very difficult. Because the moment I know that I am leaving the power, I will do everything to loot some money, at least to survive for the next future. So mean that every time I want to eat more because tomorrow there is no food for me. So this kind of system we need to take out of African heads, that the person know that I am here to serve the community, and I can be here today and tomorrow I will never be there. But the only thing I want to leave behind is the legacy that people can remember us. And I can assure you, Doctor, if you went to verification and investigation of many different countries, the majority of the biggest structures in Africa was built before the democracy and the electoral system. I don't know if you people agree with me. Any big project realized now in Africa, 70% of those projects was realized before this political party and elections, because the government was concentrated to make sure that the common mwananchi gets some services. But after this political system, election, political parties and everything has been diverted only to play those games, that the situation is getting worse and worse. So we need to come to an understanding that what can we do at least to make sure that if the common man, the common population are getting the basic services that they deserve for their country, election can be worthless, because they don't want to know who is in power. As long as whatever he's looking for as a citizen of the country, he is satisfied. If you see people are taking bribe, to elect someone because they are not satisfied.
Despite that, if right now everybody having a better life, when you come to talk to them, they don't listen. They say, go and take care of that your business. We are not interested. We get whatever we want. So at the end of the day, our politician will never have power. I surrender, Dr. Matsanga. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think now, is it Mr. Great? Just one word.
Okay, Dr. Mastanga, thank you for
Just
very,
a quick
thank you
one.
very much. Yeah, on a quick note, it doesn't mean that we don't have good leaders in Africa. We lack leadership qualities in Africa. And the basic problem I sense here is not the election, but the problem of continuity. Let's assume that we have election and each regime try to continue from what the previous government is doing, that this will be a kind of an agenda, that Nigeria have an agenda of 2030. Even when you are the president, even when you are whatever, through election, through appointment or whatever, that this is a clear structure or this is a clear way forward for Nigerians. I quite agree that election these days in Africa is a mess, but I'll still not agree that we should just cancel election, because if we go by appointment, those who will do the appointment are still the very few elites that we have in the corridor of politics. Let us try to understand this.
Can I jump in? Time is going. Can I jump in here and ask you one question?
Yes, sir.
Is the problem of Nigeria? What is the problem of Nigeria?
We have an excessive problem ranging from religion, ethnicity, and even election, I may say, because of the way it is being done. Understand this in quote.
So
we
if
in
you
Biafra land.
Ask, okay, you have answered very well.
Okay.
Now, if you have a problem already of ethnicity,
okay,
corruption,
okay,
you want an election, how will it look like? You already have a problem of ethnicity.
Yes.
And the problem of Africa and the problem of Nigeria is not that Nigeria is poor. Nigeria is corrupt. People are corrupt. It's corruption in Nigeria that kills Nigeria. Not that people in Nigeria don't have the money. There is plenty of money, but it has been eaten by a regime which is in power.
That's what I'm saying, Dr. Matsanga.
Yes. So how do you hold an election with a regime
we have
that has money and the people don't have money?
Is it? You still come back to money issue on election? That's why I say our problem is not election. Our problem is leadership. We lack leadership. We lack leadership. Those people who have the will to do the bidding of the masses. This is leadership problem, not even the election.
So you agree?
We might have the problem in the...
You therefore agree, Mr. Great. You agree that Nigeria lacks leadership?
Yes.
So you don't have a leader. You have a leader who kidnaps people. You have a leader who kidnaps people. Yeah, he kidnaps people.
I accept that.
You're honest.
Okay. I can accept that. I can accept that.
No.
I can accept that.
Let me tell you, Mr. Great, wait. Let me tell you that this leader has ever tried to abduct Umar Diko in 1983. Don't forget, some of us are 65 years old in Stansted Airport. It's not a lie.
Okay.
He was a leader in 1984. He abducted Umar Diko and put Umar Diko in a coffin. And the intelligence found Umar Diko in Stansted Airport being shipped to Nigeria to be killed by Buhari. We have not forgotten. This type of leadership on this continent, we don't want it.
We don't want it. I agree with you on that. But
Thank
I
you very
just
much.
said Buhari
We are
is
really
a religious bigot.
So why did you Nigerians elect such a man?
This is we have problem with the process, not the election itself. Try to understand me. In quotes, election is just to get someone. How do you do that? It might be a consensus agreement of the total population, not just an airline. You understand? If we scrap it totally, that means how are we going to elect a good leader? We still have good people in Africa. Check what Peter Obi did in Anambra State.
Show me one.
Good luck. You asked a question which I wanted to answer you. You asked if there had been a president who writes 2 speech. Good luck, Ebele Jonathan did.
Okay.
He congratulated Muhammadu Buhari even before the election. So this might be, if we have somebody like Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, during his regime, he did even more things in the north, even when he's from the south. So let us just see our problem that we don't have those leaders that have that political will to help the consensus. Minor, I would like to have a personal word with you. We need to talk one-on-one more.
Thank you. This television is open again tomorrow, and we can have a discussion open and continue to talk until we talk. But there is a problem that I want to bring to an end, that our time has passed and our satellite is warning us. I want to thank all of you for taking part or for having taken part in this discussion. Remember Matsanga Ticking Point. There are 2 powerful programs on Punchline Africa TV. Matsanga Africa Perspective and the Matsanga Ticking Point. I brought this topic because it's ticking in your minds. You have seen how you have been ticking now. And Mr. Great, I have now seen you behind. I didn't know that you are, I thought you are a very old man, but you are very still younger generation.
No, I am still your student, but we try to learn every day.
Yes, thank you. I want you to learn tomorrow, and we want to interact more. We don't have time. Our satellite time is over. I want to thank you so much for joining this show, for supporting, for saying what you have said. It is not in vain. Someone will pick it somewhere, somehow. Remember, China was the poorest country 30 years ago.
Okay.
It had one rice scheme in my country called Uganda. Today, China lends money to every African head of state. In fact, if you go quietly there, they can even give you yours pocket money quietly. And several African countries are getting pocket money. So there you are. I wish the United Kingdom playing with Denmark good luck. And I want to support you, United Kingdom, to win this match tonight so that the cup can remain in Wembley, where I live for a long time, for the last 37 years. I thank the people of Africa. Thank you very much, Gaina, Ambassador Maina. Thank you very much. I leave it to you, Tawish. I wish to finish it up. Take it away, Tawish, Olisistana. Finish it.
Oh, very well. Thank you so much, Dr. David Matsanga. Of course, the colleague panelists who have made their contribution on this very important program tonight, Dr. Matsanga. I suppose it's a very good program and educative for that matter, one which is going to enlighten not only the East Africa region, but the entire African continent more so on this very critical question as to whether really Africa needs election or not. Dr. Matsanga will want to submit tonight that perhaps it's time Africa really thought so deeply as regards to this question of elections. When we talk about borrowing the model from the most developed countries, or if you like America, I mean, we can always borrow and try to see what works for Africa and what does not work for Africa. Look into the constitutions, Dr. Matsanga. Today, we have so many of the African countries, Kenya being an example, which has borrowed a progressive constitution as is touted from the American concept, and one which is not working coherently with Kenya or the Kenyan context. So, Dr. Matsanga, we cannot continually blindly just borrow everything or every other model from the most developed countries. I think it is time Africans need really to sit down and think, what is it that is practical? What is it that is workable for the African continent and for the African people? And if elections has become a nightmare, has become a problem when it comes to selection of leadership or determining the kind of governance. So I submit, Dr. Matsanga, that maybe it is time we had a conversation about a new concept altogether, one which is going to make sure that we have a leadership or a way of getting leadership, but not necessarily through an election. I submit tonight, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much. This is Matsanga talking, ticking point, coming all the way from the political command center of Africa. This station, therefore, is for Africa, by Africa, with Africa. Ciao.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.